at mile 29. So with 71 miles to go, every time I would go downhill and I would step anything going downhill, I felt like there were knives stabbing me in the legs. So for the next 71 miles,
oh my
yeah.
goodness.
And it was an interesting experience because it taught me so much about my limits, my perceived limits, and what we're actually capable of.
This is about humans dreaming together.
About humans supporting each other on our journeys.
It's about the science and the art behind making our dream lives a reality.
To the students of life,
the young and the curious,
the dreamers and the doers,
to those who crave to be a strong individual
and want to be part of something bigger than themselves. Welcome.
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 Welcome to the Dreamology podcast. Welcome, everyone, to the Dreamology podcast. Dreamology is the study of the art and the science behind making our dream lives a reality. And here we are focused on giving you the mindset, tools, and strategies for making daily progress towards your dreams, no matter where you are in your journey. My name is Tim Bishop, and I'm the co-founder of the Dreamers Initiative. I'm a student of life, and I'm a life conversation junkie who is on a mission to identify how to truly live the dream life and help you do the same. Our guests on this show include best-selling authors, neuroscientists, entrepreneurs, and dream chasers around the world who share their knowledge, greatest stories, and life lessons with us. Before we dig in, I want to mention this podcast is brought to us by the Dreamers Initiative, which is a personal development community that is on a mission to help Gen Z and millennials and young individuals out in the world awaken their dream life and make them a reality. We believe that humans are stronger together and that together we can accomplish anything. So, let's get started on today's episode. Hello, everyone. Today's guest is Armando Cruz, who is the best-selling author of the book The Legacy Code, where he teaches men how to unleash legacy in their life by using the 5-step model that he created. Armando is also an ultramarathoner, an adventurer, a father, a legacy coach, a physical therapist. This man really does it all, and we're really lucky to be able to have him on the show here today, and he shares with us a ton of life wisdom, stories, and he's just very grounded in what it means to live a good life and an intentional life and a purposeful life. And so I'm really excited to be able to share this conversation that I had with him with you. And so here is Armando. We have a very special guest today, Armando Cruz. Armando is a lot of things: an adventurer, ultra-marathoner, lifestyle physical therapist, a legacy coach, an author, a father. We could go on forever. Super excited to have you come on and just share all these experiences with us and your background and your story. And we're really excited. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Tim.
Awesome. Well, I wanted to start on a personal topic because I saw that, your father was a big influence for you, and you kind of say that he helped shape the man who you are today. And I'm curious if you could just share a story or a memory that you had with your father that can help us understand the impact he had on your life and why that relationship is so important to you.
Well, there are many stories. But as far as how it shaped my life, I'll tell you that I think one of the most powerful gifts that my father gave me is his action, right? Because, we expect our parents to tell us what to do, but the way he lived spoke more than what he said. And he said plenty. It was backed up by his actions. And the example I can give is, for him, one of the important parts was being physical. He did Ironmans, marathons.
Nice.
He trained, but he always had this belief that it was like, look, family's always first. So if you're going to train, you train when you're not taking time away from the family. So he would do it at 4 a.m. He would do it at 3 a.m, 5 a.m, depending on what it was. And as I was growing up, he would always invite me. He wouldn't do it at 4 a.m. or 3 a.m, but like when he was finished, then he'd come into my room at like 6 a.m, and he'd be like, "Hey, you want to go for a run?" And I was like, "It's 6 a.m. No."
Like, he's already done a full workout.
Right. So then it wasn't that he did that once. It was like, it was every day. It was like, it wasn't, you had to do this. It was knock on the door. Of course, "Hey, you awake? You want to go for a run?" I was like, "No, I wasn't awake. And no, I don't want to go for a run." And after enough times, eventually he'd wear you down. And he's like, "Fine, all right, I'm already awake. I'll go." And so, you get into the habit and you're like, "Oh, great." And you do it for a few times. And then you're like, "Nah, I don't want to do this." And then he'd invite me to go to a race. And then it'd be like, "Oh, wow, this is awesome." And then you start getting pumped up, and that'll last for about a week or 2 weeks. And then you go back to your more comfortable habits. I share that because, again, it goes back to, it wasn't that he was just saying it. It was just, this is the kind of person he was. His actions were persistent. I had to go to work with him in the summers, and he had his own company, a construction company. And he was the boss, but he'd be one of the first ones there sweeping the job site. And that was kind of his thing. He goes, I didn't understand it because I was like, "This is construction, it's supposed to be dirty." And he's like, "No, in my construction site, if somebody walks in here, I want them to feel not only confident that they can walk through the job site without getting hurt, but number two, that it looks impeccable." So I spent most of my times when I was working with him cleaning, like sweeping, picking up, cut wood that was there, put it in the trash or put it in a pile. Like there was always piles for things. There's always sweeping done. And it wasn't just that he would tell me, he would go there. In fact, the workers would love it when he would leave, because when he was there, he was relentless. Like he wasn't like telling them, is that he was leading from the front and they couldn't keep up his pace. He was like a machine.
Yeah.
So those are a few ways that kind of stand out, and the kind of character and person that he is. He's still alive, so it was.
Yeah. No, those are great examples. And I love that. You said, like, it wasn't the fact that he was just telling you things. It was that he was doing this day in and day out. And so I assume that influenced why you became an ultramarathoner yourself. He eventually convinced you that it was fun, or what was the transition point there?
Yeah, the funny story is that obviously I love running now, but when I was young, he used to coach my basketball team, and my dad was the kind of guy. He was always more interested in instilling principles and long-term habits than winning. So, all the other coaches would go and they'd be like fighting for, "Hey, this is number 1 draft pick. I want this person. I want that person." He's like, he would show up and he says, "Give me everyone that no one wants." And then, but obviously I'm I'm his son, so I'm on his team, and I'm like, "Dad, come on, can we at least get some good people?"
Draft somebody, like, "No."
Dude. Yeah. So his thing was, when it was early on, it was like, "Look, you guys may not have the skill yet, but there's no reason why you can't have the conditioning. And conditioning doesn't take skill. It takes hard work. And that's something that everybody can do." And so he would put conditioning. And I thought at the beginning, it was like, I would start crying when I was a kid, because he would make us run. And I was like, "You just making everyone run because you want to see me run," because I didn't like running. And then
You're hitting you where it hurts.
Yeah, but it wasn't that. But over the years, I actually grew a fondness of it, because what I realized was running is an honest sport. If you haven't put in the work, there's no like, you shoot and you pray in a basketball shot, and sometimes it goes in, sometimes it doesn't. But like, there's a moment there that it's up to the gods, right? That it's like, oh, they made it and it's wonderful. Running isn't going to happen. There's not going to be like that moment of like, oh, everything goes great. It's like, no,
hit
it's
the backboard and it goes in. There's no backboard.
No backboard. You just got to put one foot in front of the other, and you got to grind it out from start to end and be willing to accept more pain than anyone else. Yeah. That's really what it's about. And so I grew to love that as I grew older, and I started seeing that I was able to do better in that than in other sports, because I played every single sport and I was very athletic, but I was rarely the best one. I was actually the best one running, but in every other sport, I was never the best one, but I was athletic enough to contribute to the team. And I always found myself trying to figure out other ways, other things that I needed to be doing that somebody else wasn't doing, just to be able to keep up and be at the same level as whoever the best one was.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, watching his example definitely helped lead me there. And then I think one of the bigger ones is the adventures that we went on. The thing about running was that I would go and I would train with him once, and I was in high school. We would train before school. We would run before school. We would lift. We would do different things. And we'd spend hours and hours and hours. Right? We'd be running or riding bike, or I would do triathlons. And we'd be talking the entire time about anything and everything, whether it was training, about girls, about school, about, frustrations. And it was an avenue that opened communication for us, uninterrupted, because you weren't going anywhere. You're going to be out there for an hour or 2 hours. So why not talk?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that, I don't know if that answers the question, but
yeah, no, I'm just reflecting on my childhood, and if I would have been on a team of all the players nobody wanted, I probably would have been pissed, because I played basketball too my whole life. And I'm like, man, but yeah, so that's awesome. So then did it just evolve? So the original question, I love how you answered it. The original question was like, how did you start doing the ultra marathons? Was that just an evolution, of the journey?
It grew. Yeah, it grew out of love. I ended up running in college, track and cross country. And then something, there are points in our life where we hit these crossroads that when we make the decision that we make genuinely impacts in a massive way the direction of our life. And up to that point, after my undergrad and college, my path was, or my belief was, if you work hard, you deserve what's coming to you next. Like, in other words, working hard was almost an entitlement of success. Let me rephrase that. I felt I was entitled to success because I was working hard. Right?
Gotcha.
And when I went from my undergrad to my graduate studies, I didn't get accepted. I wanted to go to UNC Chapel Hill, and I didn't get accepted, not because I didn't have the grades. I had phenomenal grades. I graduated college in 3 years. I was a great student, but it was a misunderstanding. And that blew my mind. Like, they didn't accept me because of a misunderstanding. They thought I was trying to sneak my way into the school in a different way than I was trying to, because that's what other people were doing. And it was frustrating because I had worked hard to graduate early so that I can keep on my path. And it just threw my whole life kind of like, it was a shocking moment for me.
Right.
And it was the biggest blessing, though at the time it really sucked. It was the biggest blessing because it forced me to evaluate my beliefs. It forced me to evaluate kind of what I wanted to do and how I wanted to do it. And I got so frustrated that I talked to one of my old college teammates and I said, hey, I'm thinking about doing this Western exploration. I'm going to be gone for like 3 months. Do you want to do it? And at the time, it was a great story because at the time, he's like, he didn't have the money and he had some debt. And he goes, I'll call you back in a day. Let me know. I'll let you know in a day. And he called back and he goes, I just got a brand new Discover card with no interest for 1 year. I'm going.
What?
So
is amazing.
We left for 3 months running all the national parks from Colorado all the way to California and then back. And it was such a defining moment for us because I started really embracing running as an adventure and as a way to experience the world. And it was great because he was the exact opposite of me. I was very book smart. I was very, let's call it square. He was the exact opposite. He was very street smart, and he was the wild one.
Yeah.
And we balanced each other quite well. People thought we were going to kill each other, but No, because we lived out of my car that was a 2-door hatchback.
Oh, let's go.
And we lived out of a tent for 3 months, living in the national parks and running. We ran every single day, once if not twice, and that was the rule. Like, I think we made it through 3 cities that we stayed in the city proper. We went. It was in San Francisco. We stayed with some friends. In Las Vegas, we went to Vegas. We were there for like 3 days.
Not a bad break.
Yeah. But the rule was, no matter what happened, no matter how late, we had to run. Like, you ran on the strip for at least an hour.
Yeah.
And, you know, some days were a little more hungover than others, but they happen. But again, all of that to say that running became an avenue for adventure and self-discovery, because when you're out there doing an ultra marathon, it's like, you're going to be in pain. Like, at some point you're going to get uncomfortable. At some point you're going to hurt, and you're going to have to be consistent enough and keep putting one step in front of the other to either stick with it, or eventually it goes away. It's amazing, but eventually it goes away, or your body goes numb. And I really embraced that and loved that idea. So that's kind of the evolution of the ultra marathon.
Yeah, dude, that sounds like the coolest adventure of all time. I love that. You like had this path, and you didn't work out, right, for one reason or another, and then you just said, screw it, I'm gonna do something that's like just insanely adventurous. And look, like, while you look back at that experience, like, I'm sure that shaped then a lot of your decisions going forward and why you're ultra. Wait, so let's step back here. People who are listening might not know what an ultra marathon is. That's over 100 miles, correct? Like, that's
so
the definition.
The actual definition of an ultra marathon is anything greater than a marathon. So
okay,
anything greater than a marathon is considered an ultra marathon. But
okay.
I did I've only done one. I've done several 50 milers. I've done one 100 miler, and that was the most painful. I did it. It's going to be 2 years this November, but I'm doing my second one now in April. So I'm looking forward to it.
Crazy, man.
Yeah.
Dude, so how long does that take you? Like, how many hours?
Well, this 100 miler, again, never having done it, in my mind, I know I can do it under 24 hours. I ended up doing it almost in 29, because basically after 27 miles, at mile 29. So with 71 miles to go, every time I would go downhill and I would step anything going downhill, I felt like there were knives stabbing me in the legs. So for the next 71 miles,
oh my goodness.
And it was an interesting experience, because it taught me so much about my limits, my perceived limits, and what we're actually capable of. Because there's no way that I would have told you that the amount of pain that I was in, I was going to finish that thing. I wasn't thinking about 71 miles. I was just thinking about, hey, get to the next aid station where I can fill up on water or get something to eat. And then, okay, get to the next one. But I remember crossing the line with my wife and my 10-year-old, because they came to support me. And the race finished on a track. And I remember crossing the line with them. And the two things that came to my mind after being in excruciating pain and finally being done was, I can do this faster, and I can do a 200 and 300 mile run. Like, in my mind, because at that point it became a mental game. I realized that there's a point where you can only train so much. If you're going to train for a 200 miler, you're not going to be running 100 miles every day. You're not going to be running, there's only a certain amount there's a finite number of hours in a day, plus all your other responsibilities. So there's a point where the physical training reaches a limit. And so the question is what do you have between your ears? Like, what's going on in your head that's going to allow you to move forward? And going through that pain really taught me that I definitely have what it takes to keep pushing the boundaries, keep pushing the limits on what my body is capable of, for no one else but for myself, right? Because there's something about that was very freeing and empowering.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah. It's almost like, I found that interesting in my own life too. Like when you start to just crush those like small limiting beliefs, and then like the door just opens. Like, you barely, you get this 100 miles done, but the 70 miles are this like, knife stabbing pain. You finish and instantly like, I can go 200, I can go 300. Like when you just eliminate those small limiting beliefs in life, it seems like it opens up the door for like endless possibilities. So you're doing it again. So you weren't scared away, right? This is your second take at it.
Yeah. Well, I actually, here's one thing I'd like to share about that, because I think oftentimes it's easy to get or to romanticize these big things. Oh, wow, you did 100 miles. But the journey up to it was actually quite more, I think, more empowering if you pay attention to it. So rewind 4 years before I did the 100 miler.
Okay.
I've been training all my life, but I was very inconsistent. I'd run 2 or 3 days, and then I wouldn't run for the rest of the week. And then, I'd lift for like 1 or 2 days, and then I wouldn't lift. My training was all over the place. It was enough to keep me healthy, but there's no consistency.
Gotcha.
And I realized that, and I said, I'd like to change that. And so I set a few goals that I was going to do. One of them, or a few habits that I wanted to put, that I still do to this day, by the way. One of them was do 10 minutes of movement. So my thinking was, okay, look, let me see if for the next 30 days, I can commit to doing 10 minutes every day of walking, stretching, running, lifting, some kind of activity, movement. That's why I called it movement, for 30 days straight. And then when I got there, I was like, okay, I did it. I didn't miss a day. Let's see if I can do 60. And then I was like, oh, I did that. Let me see if I can do 90. And when I got to 90, I was like, I could do this for the year.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did it for a year. And what's interesting is that I did those 10 minutes for almost 2 years without missing a day. And then after that, I said, what would happen if I now, on top of those 10 minutes, I said, what if I ran 30 minutes every single day for 30 days? And let's see if I could do that. And so I did that, and I was like, let me get to 5 weeks. So, it's 35 days. Okay, great. So as I got there, I was like, what happens if every 5 weeks I increase 15 minutes? How high can I take that? And every 5 weeks I would increase 15 minutes, and I got up to 2 hours every day.
Wow.
So I did that for a year and a half of running.
Were you doing it in the morning, or were you doing it after work?
Whenever I could.
Whenever you could. Okay.
In the morning, in the middle of the day. I mean, when you're talking about 2 hours, it's hard to craft out 2 hours.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I would squeeze it in whenever. Whenever I could do it straight through, I would. But a lot of times I had to break it up, especially like when you're talking about an hour and a half, 2 hours. Like, it's just a big chunk of time. So I share that all because you're talking about 2 years of 10 minutes, then almost a year and a half of running every single day. And then I did the 100 miler. So it wasn't like, oh, this guy is so awesome. He can do it whenever he wants. He's just gifted. I was like, no, it was a 4-year journey before I even toed the line.
Yeah.
That got me there. But it's those little things that you do consistently that create transformation.
For sure. Yeah, no, that's a really good point. Thanks for emphasizing that. And I like how you prefaced the whole thing, which was the journey is the most like important part if you pay attention to it. Cause like you have to be able, at least reflecting or being able to pick up on like what's happening, and or else you're just always going to kind of focus on those noticeable things, right? Like I did the race, but you obviously looked back and are pretty aware. That's cool. I like that. I like the choice of the word movement too, because I think that oftentimes it's physical exercise is always thought about as like you go to the gym or, something that's like high intensity, but stretching. I mean, I do a lot of yoga myself and walking, and just like any sort of activity is good for our bodies. We sit way too much and we're not we're not using them. So sweet. Thanks for sharing all that. Okay, let's transition. So I know I want to talk about your book eventually, but I know like there was kind of the 5 steps, and one of the first pillars was sort of awareness. And I kind of want you to take us on your journey a bit before we dive into actually what's in the book. But what did the journey of like you understanding yourself look like? And I'm just curious on how you became to like grow more self-awareness around who you are, the type of work you want to do, the type of father that you want to be now after having such an important father in your life. Can you just take us a little bit on behind the scenes of that journey and maybe some of the big moments on that?
It's a great question. And I think one of the things that I want before anyone hears this is understand that my awareness, just like your awareness, will evolve as the stages in your life aware. Don't think that you're going to be the same person at 20 that you are at 40. Well, hope that you're not, right?
Fingers crossed.
Right. So the awareness that I had in my 20s was very, very different. Like I had this idea of who I was and what I was put on this earth to do that is very different than the one I have right now. And so when I was in my 20s, I thought it was about, getting the best job and kind of getting through school and just being the best, doing the best that you can and do the hard work. And there's nothing wrong with that, but that was the focus of everything that I was doing. As I moved out into, let's call it the real world from college, because the college is a bubble and it's a beautiful bubble. So I'd encourage you, like if you're listening to this and you're in college, enjoy it. Enjoy the bubble because it's such a unique experience to everything else in your life after that. Mm-hmm. So don't be in a hurry to get out of it and start life like I was. Like enjoy it for what it is. And then when it's time to transition. Don't also be that guy that is now with a kid and is married and you still want to act like a college kid and hang around the frat house all the time. You become the weird, creepy guy in the frat house. Like you don't want that either.
Yeah.
Right. So honor the stage that you're in and create awareness for that. And when you do that, what'll happen is it'll create a platform, a foundation for you to build for the next stage of your life. The clearer you are on the stage that you are in allows you to create that foundation to build for the next stage. Right?
Yeah.
For myself, when I got married, it was now a big shift because now there was somebody else that I was providing for.
Yeah.
I was providing for my wife. Well, I mean, we were providing together, right? Like that. Now it was something that we had to do together. Luckily, my wife and I do very similar thing. So we work together. Like we have our company together. We have everything. So our conversations support each other. Mm-hmm. And that was by design. Like I was looking for somebody who had similar interests and similar values as myself. It wasn't by mistake. So as far as the awareness, like I knew when I was 12 or 13 years old that I wanted to be a father, like my father was to me. Like I was very clear. Like I remember consciously thinking as like, man, I have such an awesome time with my dad. When I'm a kid, when I grow up and I have kids, I want to be a dad like my dad is to me.
Yeah.
Right. So for me, it was always like, oh, I want to get married. I want to have kids. I have 3 kids now. And it's like, I find myself doing the same things. I run, 3 a.m, 4 a.m. to not mess up family time. And now my oldest, my son is 11. And so now we start going out for runs and we start training. We play basketball and we go out for a run. We go camping and hiking, but I go with all the kids camping and hiking and get them used to adventure. And what I've realized over the years is that the constant for me is adventure is one of the most important things in my life, because I feel that adventure is more a mindset than anything else. And what I mean by that is that I believe that adventure is a mindset of creating possibility. It's curiosity. It's finding out what's around the next corner. And the reason I think that's so important is because that's how you grow. That's when it puts you, when you get into those positions of that you got to suffer a little bit to overcome, to get a little bit stronger, become a little bit better. You learn lessons when you try something and you fail, but the only way you do it is through curiosity. And I'm constantly sharing that with my kids. It's like nothing great ever happens in the comfort of your home. And the point of that is like, actually they've experienced it. I said, guys, do you remember the adventures that we've been on? And they're like, yeah. And they're like, where do these adventures happen? They're like, oh, outside. All these adventures happen outside. And I said, do you remember any adventures where you're playing video games? And they're like, no. Do you remember any adventures when we're inside the house? No. Okay. So it's like, I can say something, but they've experienced it. So now they own it. And they're like, oh, like they asked me, Dad, can we go on an adventure today? And it could be in the middle of the week. And it's like, oh, what's the adventure? Oh, today we're going to walk a mile to the grocery store, pick up a loaf of bread, and then walk back and eat it on the way back. That's the adventure. We see iguanas along the way. We try not to get killed by cars along the way. But you can make adventure an everyday thing in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. Dude, I love that. I mean, you said so much pieces of gold there. Like the first thing that I'm just going back in order of you said it, but the kind of like, I don't remember exactly how you phrased it, but you said basically own the stage that you're in and like be in that stage of life and soak that up. And then when it's time to move on, like properly transition and move on. I love that. But then, the whole adventure is a mindset thing. I mean, like myself too, I consider myself someone who loves to adventure and do new things. And I just love how you phrase that. Like it really is just like a genuine curiosity. When you say the word adventure or explore, it's almost like you're inviting new things. You're inviting, new, when you travel, how much you're so much more likely to go out of your way and talk to people or, like look at this tree for a little bit longer because it looks cool or, like all these little things that if you're in your normal mindset, you might not stop and just take in. So there's almost like maybe a mindfulness component in there too that just makes you more aware of like things that are going on. And so I think that's awesome, dude. And I think it's sweet that your kids will ask you to go on an adventure in the middle of the week. I think you're doing something good there. Sweet. So then, so because I think about self-awareness all the time. And so when you think about, so like someone like me, recent college graduate, 23 years old, you're in the stage of life where you're after college and you're figuring out the next step of your life. Like, what do you ever have like exercises or recommendations that you have like for people to kind of like start to build that self-awareness, like around, a certain stage that they're at in their life? Like, what would you tell me as like a college graduate, how I could start to learn more about, myself and like who I am and the things that I want to do?
Okay. When I was growing up I had chores to do in the house. I had to take out the trash. I had to mow the lawn. I had to make my bed and do the laundry. I had to do my own laundry. I realized in doing those things, number one, you acquire skill, right? I know how to do laundry. I know how to cook, right? From before, when I was a kid, like it was part of the thing. Part of I was the oldest of four, and my mom's like, all right, everyone has a kitchen day, which means that's the day you cook and that's the day you clean the kitchen. Yep. You want your clothes done? You got to put the clothes in the laundry. Don't tell me, Mom, hey, I don't have anything to wear. You know how to operate the washing machine? Do it yourself, right?
Yeah.
And I quickly realized as a kid, certain things that I didn't want to do in my life. I didn't want to be a trash man, right? Not that I aspired that was going to be the thing, but I quickly realized there's one check off that I don't have to worry about. I know I'm not going to be, because I've experienced it. very limited, right? Because one thing is taking your own trash. Imagine picking up everyone else's trash. It's not enjoyable. I had no desire to do it.
Yeah.
So there was one off. Second, mowing the lawn. It's a skill that I acquired. I know how to mow the lawn. I know how to do that. And I like being outside, but I didn't want to do that. So I was like, okay, great. It's a skill I acquired. I can put it in my toolbox, but I know that I don't like it. But I did find out I like the physicality of it. I like being physical. I like being outside. Okay, great. I also store that, what I liked about it, but what I didn't like about it. I mentioned that I had to go to work with my dad.
Yeah.
Well, I would go to work with my dad in the summers. Summer in Miami is like 95, 98% humidity, 98 degrees, mosquitoes. And like I said, my dad doesn't wake up late. So we're starting at the job site at 6 a.m. And he trains before. That means you're training with him. So when you go to work with him, you got to train too. So, I'm up at 4:30, 5 in the morning. I'm 12 years old, 13 years old, and I'm getting eaten alive by mosquitoes. And the work that I'm doing is you're sweeping, you're digging trenches, you're picking up cinder block, you're moving it from one place to there. In my mind, it's like, what the heck is the point? Why am I moving stuff from one end of the place to the other? But I quickly realized I don't want to do construction. Again, it's another skill set that I learned because I can be a foreman in a construction site. I can go there. I know exactly what's going on and why it's there, and I can do that. But I realized that's not my calling. But it's the anti-thing. Very often we get stuck when we don't have the clarity of what it is that we want to do. And my encouragement is search for the anti-things. Cross things out. Try different things. Go on mission trips. Go on adventures. Do jobs that aren't going to be the long-term job, but do them so that you can acquire some kind of skill, and then you have context for the direction you want to move. So the anti-thing helps give clarity because it points you in a direction away from what you don't want, and it pushes you and nudges you a little closer to where you want to, whether you know it or not. That's why I say evaluate it by saying, okay, wait, first of all, did you like it? Is this something you can see yourself doing long term? And if the answer is no, you're like, okay, great. What were the things that I took from this? What were the skills that I acquired from this? What did I like about this? What principles did I like about this? Oh, I got to deal with people. I really like dealing with people. I didn't realize it, but people energize me. Oh, great. Okay, well, I should probably start looking for jobs with people around them, not in a cubicle by myself, sitting in a dark room, programming all day. That may not be the best thing for me, right? So all of a sudden, you start getting a little bit more clarity in the direction you need to be going. You may not know exactly what it is. You may need to anti-thing it a few more times to go there. And then if you start combining that with some of your passions, you start seeing that Venn diagram of intersection. It's like, oh, people, healing, activities. Oh, great. You know what? I like working with my hand. I like people. I like optimizing people's health. Great. Maybe what I can do is become a physical therapist, or, I can do this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, that's incredible. That's you nailed that answer. My takeaways are just like you said, be adventurous and try a lot of things, but just be super mindful. Then like reflect and don't say like, oh, that was all good or that was all bad. Like say, okay, here's what I liked, here's what I didn't like. Like you said, I don't want to do that, but like I have this skill now, and I know I like this little thing about that, so I'm going to take that forward with me. And I think that was fantastic. Thank you for breaking that down for me. So this all led you into then being a physical therapist, now a coach and an author. So let's just jump into the book real quick. So when did you get the idea to write this book? And can you give us a little bit of a background on the Legacy Code, which is a modern man's guide to escape obscurity and live a life unleashed? Powerful title. Can you give me a little bit of background as to why you decided to write this?
So it had to do with the work that I was doing with my coaching clients. And, you remember when I mentioned that in life, we hit these moments in our life that genuinely shift the direction of the course of our life. I hit that in a really, really dark way, maybe 6 years ago. My wife and I had our fitness and physical therapy studio in Miami, and we were helping plenty of people. Something felt off for me, and everything that we had built over the past six at this point, like 7 years prior, I felt was now the thing that was imprisoning me. I felt started to get a little constrained, not because of the people were great or my clients were great, not because of the business itself. I felt that there was something wrong with me. I felt like I just felt trapped. And I don't know if you've ever felt trapped, but it's like this pressure on your chest, this pressure, this burden and what makes it worse is that you don't know why. It's not like if you're carrying a 100-pound ruck and you're like, oh, I'm tired and my shoulder and my neck hurt. Oh yeah, because I got a 100-pound ruck. What do I do to fix that? Oh, I just put it down, take it off.
Yeah.
But the problem was that when you're talking about emotional stuff, when you're talking about the stuff of the mind, it's less clear often. And so you feel the weight, you feel this burden trapping you and holding you down. You just don't know what it is. So you can't just take it off. And unfortunately for me, it took me down a pretty dark path. I say that I was in a depressed state, meaning I was in a less than state, not clinically depressed, but, I started turning down business. I almost bankrupted our business, and my wife was pregnant with a third child. And it was literally a crossroads in life. And my wife was frustrated. She didn't know how to help anymore. She was like, I don't know how to help you. And around that time, I had a coach of mine reach out, and he invited me to Thailand. He said, look, I think I'm having this retreat out in Thailand. I think this could really help. And there were two problems with that. Number one, like I said, I almost bankrupted the business, so I didn't have the money. And number two, during the dates of the retreat was essentially would have been a week and a half earlier than the due date. So if my son was born early, which very doable, is number 3, I would miss the birth of my third child. And I remember having the conversation with my wife, and this is like what I always express to people. This was a moment of great courage that I had the opportunity to witness, because she looked at me and she asked me, do you think that this is something that'll get you out of this funk? Do you think this will help you? And I remember like distraught and I feeling that burden on top of me. And I said, yeah, I truly believe it would. And she goes, well, then you need to go. And you need to go and do it, not for you, but for us, because I would rather you miss the birth of our child than you miss the rest of our lives, because you're not the man, the husband, and the father that I know that you can be. And I was like, oh,
dude, I just felt that. Wow.
Right. So fast forward, I go to Thailand. In there, I do some clarity work, and I realize that one of the things that I really wanted to do was connect with other men just like myself, who are married, who are entrepreneurs, but are family-centric entrepreneurs, guys who have the family first as opposed to the profit first. And I realized that nobody was really talking to them. And I felt like there was an opportunity for me to be able to serve on a really meaningful level. And so I created a whole program while I was there in Thailand. And I got back. This is the part I want to make sure I don't forget to say this. I got back And I did not miss the birth of my child.
Hey, perfect.
So he was born actually 3 days after I got back. So
Amazing.
he waited. And
you know.
So after I returned, I started doing this coaching work, this more in-depth work with other men just like myself. And I did that for like 2 or 3 years. And I realized this is something that more people need to get. But I realized not everyone is ready to do coaching, because coaching, first of all, is a luxury. It's not a necessity. And the reason I can say that is because we survived for millions of years without coaching. There weren't coaches back in the day. You know, we survived, but coaching isn't for surviving. Coaching is for thriving. And so that's why I say it's a luxury. This is an opportunity for you to fast track where you want to do, because you get to borrow someone else's prefrontal cortex when you're not clear. And you get to fast track the process because, again, you have more direction, support, and focus and clarity, whereas before you wouldn't. So I wrote the book, and I wrote the book in utter ignorance. If I knew how difficult it was going to be, I probably wouldn't have started. Right? This is a perfect example of ignorance is bliss.
Yeah.
And to show you how ignorant I was with the process, I wrote the book in 2000, or the book came out 2017. Yes.
3 years ago, 4 years ago.
I launched the book the week before Christmas on 2017.
Okay.
It officially came out January 15th.
Okay.
But rewind, on 2016 in December, I was hosting the Modern Man Virtual Summit in March, which is a virtual summit I did with, I think it was 12 different speakers from all across the world. Different components on how to essentially become a better man. I was putting this together. It was the first time I was doing a virtual summit. We had over 900 participants come in through it.
Nice.
In my mind, so I was putting this virtual summit together in March. This is in December. So December before, in March. So four months to the virtual summit. And I got the bright idea. I was like, you know what would be awesome if I wrote this book and I could have it and I can sell it to people in the virtual summit. I thought, oh, this would be a great opportunity because these are the kinds of men that would want to read about this. So in my mind, I decided that it would be a good idea in December. I start writing in January, and in my mind, I was going to have it written, edited, and printed in less than 3 months, having never done it. And are there people that have done it? I'm sure there are. I was not one of them.
Yeah.
I was not one of them. And so that's kind of like the backstory. It took me, sometimes I do things a little bit extreme in case you didn't pick that part up. So I remember August, I still wasn't done. And I still hadn't sent the first draft to my editor. And I was like, I have to get, like, in my mind, I needed to get this book out before the end of the year. And I basically took out $100 from my wallet and I took a picture of it and I posted on Facebook. And I said, I need your help. I said, if you comment below, if I have not sent in the first draft by this date, which was 10 days from the day I posted, I'm going to give $100 to everyone that puts a comment on there. By the end of the day, my dad's calling me, my wife is calling me, my family's calling, what are you doing? Are you crazy? I was down $9,000 if I didn't follow through. Like, there was that many comments.
You created necessity, man.
Yeah. $9,000 that I did not have. And I remember at the end of the post, I said, oh, and by the way, I don't plan to pay because I will get it done. Like I genuinely said that, right? But most of the comments were actually like, oh, you can keep your money, but we're cheering for you. But like in my mind, it was still a comment. So that's an extra $100, right?
Yeah.
The day before the due date, I was in the mountains. I didn't even pay attention. I was on vacation during that time frame, those 10 days. The back end of those, the last 5 days, I was going to be in the mountains in North Carolina with my family on vacation. My wife was like, you couldn't have done it any other time while we were there? So I ended up writing early in the morning before everyone woke up and late at night afterwards, so I wouldn't mess up the vacation. With the exception of the day of, I had to drive into town because we didn't have any reception to send my editor the book.
Hey.
Right? And so after
Well
that
done.
first draft in August, there were 12 drafts after that I wrote, and I launched the book the week before Christmas, 2 days. So I pre-launched. So the book didn't come out until January 15th, but I pre-launched it the week before Christmas. It became a bestseller 2 days later. And then everyone got their copies January 15th, which was
awesome.
pretty amazing.
That's I love that you're crazy, dude. I love it. I mean, you made it so you couldn't not do it. There was no more choice. There was no more like being able to delay it because you're like, I'm gonna owe $9,000 if I don't do this. So this needs to happen. And yeah, man, I love that whole backstory there. I actually lived in Thailand for 6 months back in 2018. So that kind of hits home for me, like going to Thailand and coming back a new man. So that story also resonated with me. So just real quickly then, the 5 steps are that you have in this model are awareness, vision, purpose, process, and implementation, correct?
Right. And this is to create, this is a model that I use to help create legacy, right?
Okay.
One of the things that I realized is that legacy is something that is ingrained in us as men, especially as we get older, especially when you have kids. In fact, for the book, I interviewed 153 guys. And what I found is that the guys that thought most about legacy were fathers. Second, were people who were religious or believed in something greater than themselves. Like they believe in God or something greater than themselves.
Yeah.
Because now it wasn't about you, right? Because legacy rarely it's not about you. It's the impact that you make. And so one of the things that or the process that I share is you have to first have awareness. Do I want legacy? Is this something that I'm actively creating? Because one thing is for certain, you're going to have a legacy whether you want it or not. The question is it going to be a legacy you accrue unconsciously or one that you create consciously?
Yeah.
And my intention with the book was to get people to start creating intentionally, not accruing unconsciously.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to let you pitch it for a second then, because I feel like, there's a ton of books out there and there's obviously a ton of podcasts. There's millions of things. Like why should somebody buy this book and check it out? And like, what kind of person would benefit most from getting a copy?
Yeah. If you're in that stage of your life, and again, this is an important distinction, because if you're in a stage of your life that you don't really care what happens and you're living moment to moment and you're okay with that, whatever, it's not going to really do much for you at this moment. But if you're in a stage of your life where you feel like, no, I want to actively create something great. Like I know that there's a bigger plan for me. And I want to explore it, then this is a book that may interest you, because it's essentially giving you the blueprint to create a system to actively create a legacy that's meaningful. One of the things that I share with them is that the life that you live is the legacy you leave. And that could scare you or excite you, because depending on how you've been living your life up to now, you're like, ooh, is that all there is? And that's what happened to me. There was a point where I got to in my life where I was like, is that all there is? And it wasn't not, is that all there is because I wanted a bigger house, a bigger car, or, more vacation. No, it wasn't a thing. It was like a fulfillment thing. It's like, no, there's more to my life than this.
Yeah.
And I'm going to seek it out.
Yeah.
So if you find yourself that you're asking those questions, then this is a great book. It's an easy read. My 11-year-old read it. By the way, that was one of the most proud moments when my son, who's 11 now, he read it when he was 10. And he's like, Dad, I read your book. It was a good book. I really like the stories and stuff that you had.
That's awesome, man. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Like, talk about a legacy, man. There you go. Passing it on. Sweet. Well, I know we're running out of time here, so I want to close it up with the final question, kind of the theme of the podcast. But if you were to define what an extraordinary life looks like for yourself, how would you define it?
An extraordinary life for me is one in which I can create I can allow, first of all, that my family knows that they're loved. But let me break it down a little further. An extraordinary life for me would be for my marriage, that my wife knows beyond a shadow of a doubt that I love her beyond anything, that I am able to take care of her, and that we're able to create meaningful experiences together. For my kids, is that we're able to create these amazing adventures, and that they never lose the desire for curiosity and to create impact in the lives of other people. So if I could do that for my kids, I know that they're going to be people who can create value in this world and not just be consumers.
Yeah.
And then from a business perspective or an impact perspective, being able to serve people on such a meaningful level that I, being in their life, could actually be one of those moments that radically shifts the course of their life, the same way we have these crossroads in life that say, wow, because I met Armando, my life radically shifted. If I could do that, I would say that would be my definition.
Thank you for tuning into this conversation that I had with best-selling author Armando Cruz. I hope that his stories about his childhood and raising his kids and running his 100-mile ultramarathon race and going to Thailand and writing a book and all this really taught you more about how you can start to build awareness in your life, how you can reflect on your experiences, and how you can start to build the legacy that you want to have. Because like he says, we're going to have a legacy whether we want it or not. So the choice is, do we want to build it unconsciously, or do we want to start to build it consciously? If you want to check out his book, The Legacy Code, I will put the link in the show notes. And my call to action is for you to sit down and really think about or write about what kind of legacy do you want to leave. And another way to think about this is, how do you want to make people feel? What do you want to give to people? When people talk about you, what do you want them to say? Because once you know that, once you know what kind of legacy you want to live, you can start being that person and being that light for people out in the world. So that's my call to action for you. Take a couple minutes, write that down, and start to truly think about that. Lastly, if there's anything about this episode that you really liked, definitely share it with me, message me, put it up on your social medias. I'd love to see what parts of the interviews that people like the best, so I can keep doing my best to provide you with amazing interviews and amazing value so you can go off and make your dream lives a reality. I will see you next time, people.